This is episode number 472 with Frederica Noble, Cross-Cultural Dating. Hi, everybody. I'm Sandy Weiner, and welcome back to Last First Date Radio, where we believe it is never too late to go on your last first date. And my guest today has gone on her last first date. She's going to talk about cross-cultural dating and what happened to her and the book she wrote about it. So her name is Dr. Frederica Hendricks Noble. She's a trained psychologist and a life coach. She was born in Detroit and she met her Englishman while living in LA. Frederica left the United States and moved to England to live and work, and she has a little bit of an accent even. Frederica is now the principal consultant and lead life strategist at Noble & Noble Consulting, where she coaches private clients through personal and professional transitions, just like the one you had, Frederica.
Hi, Sandy. Thank you for having me.
Okay, it's a pleasure to have you. So let's talk a little bit about your journey. Yeah, I know you went online to date and you met somebody from across the pond. Tell us a little bit about how that happened.
Okay, I, as you say, I met someone from across the pond. It was online. This was the early days of online dating. And so my best girlfriend said, "Oh, you should try not meeting anybody." So I did. I tried it. And on my profile, I also put, I like men with accents. And so the response I got was great, but this one response from this man intrigued me. And so we corresponded, and I hadn't heard his voice yet. And Sandy, there's just something about an English accent, I have to say, that just swept me off my feet. When I finally did hear his voice, it was just intoxicating, to say the least.
The accent. Oh, I know what you're talking about because I've definitely fallen for men just because of their accents. Like I've been attracted to profiles when they say, "I'm from Australia, I'm from England, I'm from New Zealand." And I'm just like, I just want to hear their accent. Like, I don't even care if we get along or not. Just that accent is so sexy. So, your book is called The Special Relationship, and I'd love to hear a little bit about why you wrote it and what's in it.
The Special Relationship is a little bit of a play on words because, politically, there has been Anglo-American relationship dating back to World War II. And we just developed, Great Britain has been our greatest ally since the wartime, World War II. And so there was a play on words, and the publisher thought, not only do you have a special relationship, a dating special relationship, but our countries also have a special relationship. So that's where the title came from. It's a play on words. And my relationship with Richard is unique and special. So that hence the title. What is really interesting, Sandy, is that all those normal dating emotions and feelings we went through, but we had the added layer of cultural difference. And oftentimes folks think, well, since the English are, they speak English and they are our greatest ally, how different really would it be to date an Englishman? And I have to tell you, it is different. It's different. They have a different culture than we do. And we speak American. We don't speak English. I learned that we speak American. So I wrote the book because it's the book that I wish that I had when I entered the relationship with Richard when we started seriously dating and eventually even when we got married. So that's why I wrote the book. It's because it's the book I needed to kind of transition myself to living and working in England.
I can imagine how different it is. We took a 5-day cruise once across the Atlantic to England from New York. And I remember getting there and we bought a Harry Potter book because Harry Potter was really big and my kids were really into it. And we bought it in England and it had just come out there. And the language was different. They used torch instead of flashlight and jumper instead of sweater. And so, getting used to language differences and knowing how to speak. Today, we have so many television series, like on streaming networks, that are filmed through the BBC. And so we hear a lot of the language differences, but I think for a lot of people, they don't realize that the spoken language, even though it's the same words, we use different words to describe different things.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so I had to adjust to that. And do you mind if I just tell you a funny story?
No, please.
When we first started dating and Richard had come to LA to work, by the way, he somehow wrangled getting seconded to Los Angeles about 6 months after we met. So he said, "Oh, shall we meet for dinner? Let's go to dinner." And I said, "Oh, that would be great." And he shows up at my office at 1:00 in the afternoon, and I'm thinking, I'm sorry, I thought we were meeting for dinner, not lunch. And plus I've already eaten lunch because I eat at 12. And he said, no, we're going to have dinner. And what I lost in translation was that for him, dinner was lunch and our dinner is called tea for the English. If you want to have tea, that's more like our dinner, traditional dinner. So just as you say, just the subtleties and the learning the language. So now, now he's able to speak American. And so he knows that when I say, "Oh, do you want to have lunch?" it means noon or 1:00 and not dinner time for him. So it's learning those little subtleties.
Yeah, that's really funny. So you had already eaten, you had no idea. It's hard enough to communicate with someone who speaks the same exact language from the same culture. We often have so many misunderstandings, and I can imagine just other layers to the misunderstandings through communication.
Yes.
So I know you say that dating somebody from a different culture gave you a new perspective on being American. So tell us a little bit about that.
It did, because what's interesting is I found living here in England that when people hear my voice, they say, "Oh, you're American." So it's not so much when they look at me. I mean, they have no idea, my background when they look at me, but when they hear my voice, it's the nationality that comes out. So rather than the ethnicity, which is interesting. And that was an interesting kind of perspective for me. So it's very much, I think it happens throughout Europe where people identify as being French or British or German or Italian, rather than say, black or white or Latina first. And so it was very interesting too, just because I've been here almost 20 years. So in terms of watching, folks are very much interested in American culture. And so there are things that we take for granted being Americans, like big refrigerators, big space, that is not necessarily the norm here in Europe. So for instance, in advertisements, they say American size refrigerator. And that means it's a massive refrigerator. But for us, it's, that's like a normal size. So to emphasize how big the refrigerator is, they put in the front of it American-sized refrigerator. So then people know automatically you've got a big refrigerator. And things like space. Space is a premium here. And they use a lot more wardrobes than closets, where typically when you go into anyone's house in America, they have a front hall closet where everybody hangs their coat, and the bedrooms all have closets. There's space. And so I really took for granted the space that I have in America, and I appreciate it much more having lived in England and recognizing how much space is a premium. So there are little things like that. And those aren't necessarily things that you think of when you're dating, but it does come up when you start to seriously get into a relationship. And, you're visiting and it's like, where should I put my coat? Well, there's no hall closet to hang it in. There's something else, or you have to go further along in the house to find a place to put your coat.
It's really interesting, and it reminds me a lot of Israel, where my daughter lives, and I go there and they have no closets. They have very few closets. I think all of their closets are wardrobes, actually, when I come to think of it. And appliances are smaller. The space is so small, and they make it work. It's almost like everybody has a tiny house and they have to have multiple use for everything in the house. And then I come home to my space and I don't have a huge house, but it looks like a mansion when I return home. So I think, we don't realize that most of us have yards. Most of us have space. And I think in Europe in general, it's a very different life. Let's take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Amazon Music Unlimited. You can listen to over 70 million songs and thousands of playlists and stations. Plus, you can now stream your favorite podcasts like Last First Date Radio. You can listen to any song, anytime, anywhere, on any of your devices, your smartphone, your tablet, your PC or Mac, Fire TV, and any Alexa-enabled devices like the Amazon Echo. Get Amazon Music Unlimited for free for 30 days. Just head on over to getamazonmusic.com/lastfirstdate to learn more and claim this offer. In America, I imagine that you were identified by race more than nationality. And so how did that feel to be identified first for your nationality, before your race, before anything else that was your common identifier?
Yes, Sandy, it was a different and new experience for me. I mean, clearly I'm a Black woman, and that's how I identify. And when I'm in America, I'm a Black woman. I'm clearly visible, but here I could be Black British. And so it wasn't until I start to speak that people say, "Oh, she's not one of us. She's not a Brit. She's an American." And so that was just an interesting kind of flip of what normally had happened to me throughout my childhood, adulthood. And so I also think that when you're dating cross-culturally, it's important that the person that you're with understands how you identify, because that's going to help in your relationship. And so I was fortunate enough that Richard did this too. He sees me, yes, he understands I'm a Black woman, but he sees me as American. So that Americanness comes first. I just found that really, really fascinating.
And Richard he's white, correct?
White British, right?
Right, white British. So, had you dated other men from different cultures before, Richard?
He was my first
Your first.
foreigner. He was my first, and he'll be my last. Yeah, so it was really interesting. And, I debated, should I mean, I love my American men, should I really be going across the pond? But it was just, he was so flexible in his thinking and his perspective. He was so open, and I love that about him. And that's not to say that American men can't be that way either. But he wanted to also enjoy my culture and the States. He loves going to the United States because each state has its own personality. And he was able to, now he's been to more states than I have. But he loves that kind of exploration. And I think I was attracted to that about him.
Yeah, I mean, he sounds like a really open person. And you also are an explorer. You decided to uplift your entire life and move across the pond and leave family and friends behind for love. And so that's a big risk. And then you enter into this country that has it's got a lot of flavors. I think for people who think about England, they think about London, they think about, the Big Ben, they think about some of the big, tourist attractions, but they don't really understand that there are lots of different accents, lots of different cultures within Great Britain. And so you go into detail in the book and explain, here's what this is all about. There's, the Scottish and the Irish and the this and that. And I think that, and some of the accents are hard to understand for an American ear, like
Yes.
more the Cockney and the, the more strong Yorkshire is probably, for me, it's harder to understand Yorkshire and it's whatever. So what did you find to be maybe the most surprising about being in Great Britain?
I think what you just mentioned is an excellent example. It's some of the accents for me too. That northern accent is so strong and thick. I have to ask people when I'm up north in Manchester and Yorkshire, like you said, I have to ask them to repeat sometimes what they're saying because it just glazes over. And even with Richard, Richard is a country boy. He's from the West Country, so he's not a city slicker like from London or anything. He's a country boy, so he's got a country accent, believe it or not, an English country accent, which it's really cute. And so I was surprised by that because naively, I did think everybody sounds like a BBC America presenter. They've got that Queen's English. It's very pronounced.
It's proper.
Right. And so that was surprising. Everybody does not sound like that, but it makes sense. It's just like us in America. You've got your East Coast, New York, Boston accents. Then you've got those charming Southern accents with the Southern drawl. And then you have me. I've got a Midwest accent, although I don't hear it. So it's very much, that was a big surprise to me. And can I just also tell you that it was a surprise how difficult it was learning to drive. So that was a surprise. I didn't think, I'd been driving in America since I was 15. So I didn't really think it would be difficult learning that. But I think, again, when you're dating someone who's not from your culture, it's really interesting the things that you kind of take for granted, but in other cultures. So for instance, if I was dating a man from the Caribbean who in some Caribbean countries, they also drive on the left side, I'd have to get used to that. And so it's just fascinating, again, the things that we take for granted. And related to the car is manual stick shifts are the norm here, not automatics. And so I had to adjust to that as well. Learning to drive a stick shift again was interesting.
Yeah, I still have a stick. I could get used to that. But most people don't. People are shocked that I drive a stick shift, and they're like, wow, you're a woman, you drive a stick shift. Why do that's pretty amazing. But yeah, I can imagine. Actually, when we went to England, and we've been a few times, I never drove. I was petrified to drive on the other side of the steering wheel and on the other side of the street, because it is like your brain is used to judging space and distance because we drive on one side. And so it is an adjustment. And some people here in America have a hard enough time judging distance and space, driving the way most of us drive. So let's talk a little bit about map and technology. You say that those things can help your first date go well. Tell us a little more about that.
Okay, well, technology, because you can find out a little bit more about your potential date or partner. Pretty much nowadays, everybody has some kind of imprint, and you can look for them on the World Wide Web. So it's very fascinating to do that. And having a map, particularly if you're dating someone not from America, knowing where they live, knowing a little bit about their country or area of the country that they live in is really helpful. It will give you some perspective on their background. And so that's why I think using those two elements, the map and technology, and it's really easy to do with Google Maps or something. You can look to see, oh, okay, so this makes sense. It makes sense that Richard, he grew up in Bristol, which is a completely different city than London. It has a completely different vibe to it than London does. And so, yeah, it makes sense where he grew up and why he sounds the way he does and why he kind of looks at things the way that he does. So that's why I was saying a map and technology are great tools for anyone about to embark on a dating relationship.
I like that you were willing to really understand the culture before making any kind of assumption or conclusion based on your own experience. And I think that's an important thing to think about, whether you're dating cross-culturally or not, that we need to open up and see the world through somebody else's eyes and not just ours. I think this is something that really gets in the way of dating. It's like we just think, oh, I would never do that, so that's weird. Never dating that person again, instead of coming in with curiosity and really trying to understand their world. I think that's really wonderful that you were able to do that.
Thank you. Yeah. It is so important for not only the foundation of starting a relationship, but it will that kind of curiosity will carry you through the relationship too.
Yeah, every time you have a fight, you're not just seeing it through your eyes, you're seeing it through theirs as well. I so agree with that. So Frederica, if somebody else is interested in a cross-cultural dating, what advice do you have for them?
A couple of things. So the first is what we were just speaking to, and that is maintaining your sense of curiosity and openness to the other person's perspective. Also, I think having a sense of vulnerability in terms of it's okay not to know something about someone. And this could be whether you're dating someone cross-culturally or not. It's okay to not know everything about them or everything about where they are, and part of the fun and dating this person could be finding out more, learning more about what makes them special. Bringing your authentic self to the relationship is so important, so that the person is able to see you for who you are, faults and all. Just bringing that to the table is very, very important, the authenticity.
Which ties into the vulnerability as well. It's not to think that you have to know it all, not think you have to be perfect, but the whole attraction in this cross-cultural relationship is I'm attracted to your culture and who you are. You're attracted to my culture and who I am, which is what you found in Richard, that
Yes.
he was really interested in embracing all of you, and he's really interested in the United States. You're really interested in everything about Great Britain and him, and and then you're constantly curious and learning about each other instead of coming in knowing or being afraid to ask. I mean, there's so many differences in the foods that they eat, the words that I remember. Spotted dick was like, what the heck is that? It's like, and but being open to like, what is that? And tell me more about that. And I remember so many wonderful things when we were in England, just going to theater and people bringing a meal to their theater experience and like sitting there and eating in like a Broadway type of show. And it's just different, but it was fun. And if you're embracing it and not saying, why is this so weird? Then you're going to enjoy the whole process, and what a great adventure. So, and now I think you have at least one child. Do you have, how many kids
Yes.
do you have?
We have a son who is 7, and he is in school in England, and we just spent the summer in America. And so he gets the best of both worlds. He's a very lucky little boy to be able to experience that. And he loves both cultures.
And it really speaks to your relationship as well, that finding that balance of it's not, necessarily you doing everything for him or him doing everything for you, but that you found a way to integrate both of your lives so that neither one of you feels completely compromised here, which I think is great. This was really an interesting conversation, Frederica, and I hope people go and find your book, The Special Relationship.
It came out at the end of July, and if folks go to fredericanoble.com, they can find it.
I know that you have something special to give to our audience. Can you tell us about it?
Yes, I would like to give a couple of your listeners a book, a free book, The Special Relationship. So if they go to the author's website, fredericanoble.com, and put in last first date, that's how I'll know who they are, and leave their contact information. Then I can send the book to them.
How many books are you giving away?
3.
Okay, great. So 3 people can win a free book, and especially if you're interested in cross-cultural dating, this is a great resource, and especially if you're thinking of moving to Great Britain, there's tons of information here about how to adjust to the culture, and you've really researched everything from what to eat, where to go, how to shop for food, for clothes, for everything. So it's really helpful when you go to a new place and you have no idea where to get started. I mean, there are people who make their living helping people adjust to a new culture. So this is a great guide to not only finding your special relationship, but being able to navigate it as well. So thank you so much, Frederica, for coming on the show. Here's
to your
last first date.
Thanks, Sandy.
Thank you, Frederica.